Most people assume this video appeared by chance, that it was the algorithm, the fatigue of the early morning, the distracted finger scrolling the screen. They think they're just killing time. But Carl Jung understood something colder. Nothing that reaches you during a silent collapse is coincidence. What seems random is the psyche organizing itself to force a truth you had been postponing. If this video found you today, your life isn't about to change. It has already changed. You just haven't had the courage to accept it yet. There is a stage of human existence in which everything seems to crumble at the same time. Work loses meaning, relationships turn arid, the body feels heavy, and most interpret this moment as failure. They believe they are getting worse, that they've lost their way, that something has broken. That's where the most costly mistake of modern life takes root, mistaking dissolution for destruction. Jung observed this pattern in thousands of patients. It wasn't decline. It was enantiodromia, an ancient Greek word he rescued to describe a brutally precise psychological mechanism. When anything is taken to its extreme, it converts into its opposite. Excessive light produces blindness. Excessive control produces collapse. Excessive performance produces terminal exhaustion. And terminal exhaustion, when not interrupted, produces the one event the common mind fears: awakening. What you call a crisis isn't a failure of the system. It's the system working exactly as it must. The pain that keeps you awake at 3 in the morning isn't the enemy. It's the messenger. It came to say that the character you built to survive no longer fits the creature you have become. And contrary to what shallow self-help teaches, you won't leave this phase more motivated. You'll leave more naked, without the masks that guaranteed your acceptance, without the calculations that guaranteed your comfort, without the anesthetics that guaranteed your illusion. Most resist this moment because they were trained to believe that feeling bad is always a mistake to be corrected. They run to the next course, to the next quick therapy, to the next relationship, to the next stimulus. And the more they run, the deeper the crisis becomes, because the psyche isn't asking for distraction, it's demanding dissolution, and dissolution, in Jung's language, is the biochemical price of real transformation. What is happening then is this: you are not breaking apart. You are cracking from within to let out what can no longer remain trapped. And it is here that the second illusion appears, perhaps the most persistent of all. You were taught since childhood to believe that personal development is a process of accumulation, that you become someone by adding habits, courses, titles, certifications, improved versions, that there is an ideal personality to be built, brick by brick, with effort and discipline. This is probably the most profitable misunderstanding in the history of popular psychology, because Jung taught the opposite. You don't become who you are by adding. You become by removing. The theory of individuation starts from a premise that frightens the modern mind. There is within you an original configuration that was already complete before any conditioning. What life did was cover it in layers. Familial layers, religious layers, cultural layers, romantic layers, professional layers. Each of these layers was useful at a certain moment. Each of them guaranteed your emotional survival. And each of them, at the point where you now find yourself, has become a prison. It's not that you are changing. It's that the collective lie about who you should be is coming loose. The old skin is falling off, and what the mind recognizes as loss is merely the false self losing its authority. When you look in the mirror and don't recognize yourself, it's not because you've lost your way. It's because you've lost the mask, and the mask, for a long time, was the only thing you had. This explains why so many people, upon entering the individuation phase, feel guilt instead of relief. They were loved for the mask, promoted for the mask, chosen for the mask. Removing the mask means accepting that a good part of the bonds sustaining your life were built upon a negotiated version of yourself, a version useful to others, a version tolerable to others, a version predictable to others, and when that version begins to crack, others do not defend it. They punish you for daring to cease to exist. That is why this video found you. Not because the algorithm is intelligent, but because your psyche is ready to hear a truth it has been whispering to itself for months. And that is why I prepared the Code of Awakening for you. It is an inner map based on the psychology of Carl Jung, structured in 60 daily lessons, with keys, questions, and declarations that lead you, day after day, through the process of individuation in a practical way. You read the lesson, carry out a micro-action, and write your reflections in the journal. It is not motivation. It is not shallow positivity. It is real psychological work, at the pace your transformation is already demanding. The first pinned comment on this video takes you straight to it, and if what has been said so far touched something inside you, leave below just one word: accepted. That symbolic comment is the first contract you sign with yourself after years of signing contracts with everyone else. Returning to the core of the argument, there is a second lie that needs to be dismantled, and it is quieter than the first. It has nothing to do with who you are. It has to do with when it should have happened. Modern culture organized itself around a cruel temporal equation. Early success equals a fulfilled life. Delay equals irreversible failure. You were raised on a clock that is not yours. And at a certain point, you began to look back and count the things that did not happen by the age they should have happened. The marriage that did not work out, the diploma that came late, the career that stalled, the opportunity that passed. And over each of these absences, your psyche pasted a sentence: I wasted my time. Jung would have looked at that phrase with the cold patience of one who already knows what it is. He called it the provisional life, an entire existence lived as preparation for a real existence that never arrives. The person does not choose the true work because it is not yet the moment, does not end the wrong relationship because they cannot yet, does not begin the project they love because they are not yet ready. And decades later, they discover that the not yet was the only home they ever lived in. The provisional life is the grief no one understands, because there is no funeral for the self that was never born. But Jung did not stop at the accusation. He revealed the hidden mechanism. The unconscious, he said, has a prospective function. It does not look only at the past that shaped you, it looks above all at the future that awaits you. Every loss that hurt, every door that closed, every silent humiliation, every rejection, every postponement, every apparent delay were part of an invisible engineering that was sculpting you for the exact moment in which you now find yourself. It is not that time was against you. It is that you were trained to measure it with the wrong stopwatch. If what should have happened had happened earlier, it would have happened with the wrong person, with the mask still intact, with the arrogance still intact, with the unconsciousness still intact. You would have received the miracle, but with hands incapable of holding it. What life calls delay is almost always mercy in disguise. The psyche deliberately postpones the encounter with that which only makes sense after the fall. There is a brutal difference between the person who achieves something by luck and the person who becomes capable of sustaining what they conquer. The first crumbles when the wave passes. The second endures because they were cooked over a slow fire. And slow fire is exactly the psychological name for what you call the years I lost. You did not lose. You were slowly built from within, while everyone around you believed you were standing still. And this is where the third revelation comes in, the one most people avoid because it demands silence to be perceived. The most important transformation of your life did not happen on any stage. It had no witnesses. It had no applause. It happened in the tepid space of routine, when you kept doing the bare minimum amid chaos, when you decided not to yield to the same old revenge, when you chose silence over a useless explanation, when you rose for a journey that no longer made sense, simply because you had promised yourself you would still try one more day. Jung called this shadow integration. But there is a part of the shadow that hardly anyone mentions, the golden shadow. It is not only what you repressed out of shame, it is also what you repressed out of fear of being too much. Your intelligence hidden so as not to threaten, your sensitivity hidden so as not to be exploited, your ambition hidden so as not to seem arrogant, your creativity hidden so as not to fail in public. Everything you could have been but swallowed in order to survive. These parts do not die. They keep fermenting. They keep accumulating pressure inside the unconscious. And when the crisis finally arrives, they use the collapse of the old self as a breach through which to emerge. What is now being born in you is not a new version. It is the version that already existed before you learned to be convenient. The invisible work of recent years consisted of preparing the inner soil to receive this without shattering. It is not motivation. It is psychic biology. It is not luck. It is sedimentation. It is not a beginning. It is a return. And when the people who only knew you during the mask phase look at you and say you have changed, they will be right. They just will not know how to say that what changed was only the permission you gave yourself to finally stop pretending. And it is at this exact point, between permission and action, that most people get stuck. Not for lack of internal structure, for lack of accompaniment. It was for this specific interval that the code of awakening was designed. 60 days, 1 lesson per day, keys, questions, and declarations that translate Jung into concrete micro-actions. The first pinned comment takes you there. Do not postpone a crossing any longer out of fear of one more beginning. Begin now, today, while the crack is still open. Picking up the thread, the point arrives where none of this advances without one last barrier being crossed. And this barrier is not out there. It is not the family that does not understand. It is not the partner who does not grow. It is not the boss who does not recognize you. It is not the money that is missing. All of these are secondary obstacles, external echoes of a primary obstacle. The true impediment to your transformation is the truth you refuse to admit to yourself. Jung called this the persona, but not as a piece of clothing you take off. As a second skin that adhered to the identity, the persona is useful early in life. It allows you to operate in society, to fulfill roles, to carry out tasks, to receive conditional affection. But in the second half of existence it becomes a prison, because the price of maintaining it is the continuous lie about what you feel, want, fear, and refuse. There is a specific sentence, a single one, that you avoid saying to yourself for years. It might be, I never loved that person the way I should have. It might be, I hate the profession I chose. It might be, I envy the life I pretended not to want. It might be, I betrayed myself to be loved by someone who sabotaged me. It might be, I no longer believe in the God they imposed on me. It might be something even more unbearable. You know your sentence. I don't need to say it. And it is exactly that sentence that keeps you spinning in circles. As long as that sentence is not admitted in silence within your own chest, no external change will hold. You can change cities, jobs, partners, appearances. The sentence comes inside the luggage, and it will reproduce in the new setting the same pattern that produced the old one. Because the psyche is not deceived by geographic change, it is only dissolved by truth. Accepting this truth is not dramatic. It does not come with fireworks. It comes almost always with a small internal silence in which the argument with yourself finally ceases. It is the moment when you stop arguing against the evidence that your own life has been presenting for years. From then on, something strange happens. Decisions stop being difficult. Not because they become easy, but because they cease to exist as decisions. They become mere consequences of a truth that is now non-negotiable. And when that happens, 3 phenomena appear almost simultaneously. They usually frighten those who were not warned. The first is solitude. Not the ordinary solitude, the kind cured by a phone call. It is a qualitative solitude. You remain surrounded. Only you realize you can no longer speak to half the people around you without translating yourself, without diminishing yourself, without editing in real time what you feel so it fits into their understanding. This is not pride. It is individuation. Jung was clear. Individuation inevitably separates. Not out of arrogance, but because whoever becomes whole no longer needs the pacts that were sustained by mutual fragmentation. Many people around you loved the version of you that was also suffering in silence. When you stop suffering at their pace, they drift away without understanding why. The second is synchronicity. Those small alignments that logic cannot explain. The right book that appears. The random conversation that answers the question you were asking in silence. The name that comes to mind seconds before the message arrives. This video, for many, is a synchronicity right now. Jung insisted that synchronicity is not magic. It is a causal correspondence between the inner world and the outer world, occurring precisely when the psyche is crossing a turning point. If you have been noticing absurdly coincidental signs lately, It is not paranoia. It is the unconscious communicating with reality through the cracks in the rational. The third is the need for rest. A deep rest, almost animal, which the productive mind of your time interprets as laziness. You were taught that rest must be earned, that it must be conquered with effort, that it can only be accepted after the goal is met. This is the echo of a sick culture. Jung understood rest as part of wholeness. A psyche approaching the self does not run. It lands. It lets silence do the work that agitation no longer knows how to do. If you have received at the same time a different solitude, a series of strange coincidences, and an exhaustion that does not pass even with sleep, you are not breaking apart. You are crossing over. Only this is the moment when most give up, because it seems everything has gotten worse, when in truth everything has become true. The person cannot bear the weight of truth without structure and retreats again into the mask. And years later, they look back and recognize that in that instant, life offered a door they refused. Do not refuse this one. The awakening code exists precisely for this crossing. It is the map placed beside the experience so that it does not dissolve into confusion. 60 days, 1 lesson per day, daily integration on paper, transformation sedimented in the flesh. The first pinned comment on this video has the link. Do not open another tab. Do not leave it for tomorrow. Every postponement here is a reaffirmation of the mask. And your mask no longer has strength. Choose before inertia chooses for you. And we arrive finally at the point where all this reasoning turns into something colder than information. It turns into responsibility. Because from now on, ignorance is no longer available to you. At the end of videos like this, most people seek a finish line. A promise that there is a day when everything settles into place. A final milestone where one can say, "Done, now I have arrived." Jung would have smiled at that expectation, not with mockery, with clinical melancholy, because there is no arrival. Individuation is not a destination, it is a direction. It is not an event, it is a continuous alignment between what you now know and what you from now on choose. You will not wake up transformed. You will wake up informed. And the difference between these two states is the only thing that decides whether your life changes or merely gains more beautiful vocabulary to describe the same prison. People return to the mask not because they prefer the lie, but because truth without practice dissolves into memory. And memory without repetition becomes intimate folklore. You tell yourself years later that one day you believed you were going to change. From today on, the version of you that did not know no longer exists. There is only the version of you that knows and does, and the version of you that knows and does not do. And this second version suffers a specific kind of pain, which Jung described as the most unbearable of all, the pain of betraying one's own consciousness after having touched it. There is no need to act grandly. There is no need to destroy everything that exists. It is only necessary to stop defending what you already know must fall. Do not sustain for one more month the relationship your psyche has already buried. Do not repeat for one more quarter the discourse your soul no longer signs. Do not perform for one more year the version others love and that you cannot bear in silence. This video found you because you were ready. And being ready does not mean feeling comfortable. It means no longer being able to pretend. It means the crack has reached the layer where it ceases to be a scratch on the surface and becomes a structural fissure. It is now that life decides whether you cross over or whether you coat the fissure with one more layer and postpone for another decade what it has been demanding for months. You can close this video and go back to sacrificing your soul to keep your mask acceptable. It will work for a while. Then it will collapse again, deeper, darker, with less margin. Or you can accept the price of freedom now, while the door is still open. The guide is in the first pinned comment. The illusion is over. Choose.